I never thought the word widow would come to define me at the age of 34. It tasted bitter, like ashes in my mouth, every time I whispered it to myself. Just 3 months ago, Adam was alive, laughing, teasing me about my terrible taste in television shows, holding my hand under the table during dinners with friends. Now, I was standing in front of a casket that held everything I thought my future would be. The funeral hall was suffocating. The scent of lilies, sharp and sickly sweet, clung to the air, mingling with the low hum of whispered condolences. My black dress, carefully chosen to look proper, suddenly felt like a shroud strangling me. Faces blurred in front of me, neighbors, colleagues, distant relatives, murmuring phrases like, "He's in a better place," and "Stay strong, Bridget." I wanted to scream at them. "How do you know? He should be here, with me." But I stayed silent, my hands clasped so tightly that my nails dug crescents into my palms. I remember watching Cassandra, my younger sister, glide into the room. She wore a modest black dress, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. To everyone else, she looked the part of a grieving sister-in-law, supportive, composed, almost angelic. But when her eyes met mine, I felt something strange, something cold flicker in her gaze. Lucas, her 1-year-old son, squirmed in her arms, his little fists clutching at her necklace. He looked so much like Cassandra, soft curls, bright hazel eyes. I thought he was her miracle, her child after years of struggling with fertility. She had always said he was the reason she could get out of bed in the morning. I tried to focus on the service, the pastor's words about Adam being a loving husband, a generous friend, a man of faith. Each sentence felt like a knife twisting deeper into my chest because all I could think was, why did he leave me so suddenly? Aneurysm, the doctor said, a silent killer. One moment he was alive, the next he was gone. No warnings, no time to say goodbye. After the service, people crowded around me. Hug after hug, handshake after handshake, a blur of pity-filled eyes. I wanted it to end. I wanted the room to empty, for the suffocating weight of other people's grief to lift. That's when Cassandra chose her moment. We were in the reception hall, plates of untouched food laid out on white tablecloths. I stood near the window, staring at the gray sky when I heard the clink of glass. Cassandra cleared her throat, her voice calm but cutting through the low murmur of conversations. "I know this is not the time or place," she began, "but there's something I need to share. Something important. Something Adam would have wanted you all to know." The room stilled. Chairs scraped against the floor as people turned toward her. My stomach dropped. She stepped forward, clutching Lucas tighter to her chest. "This is not easy for me," she said, her voice trembling though her eyes stayed sharp. "But the truth must come out. Lucas, he is Adam's son." The words cracked through the silence like a gunshot. For a moment I couldn't breathe. I stared at her, trying to process what she had just said. Adam's son? No, that was impossible. That was, gasps echoed around the room. Someone dropped a fork, it clattered loudly against the floor. I shook my head, my voice hoarse when it finally came out. "Cassandra, stop. This is insane. How could you?" But she didn't stop. Her chin lifted, her expression calm, almost victorious. "Adam and I, we made mistakes, but he loved Lucas. He wanted to provide for him even if he couldn't be here." The world tilted under my feet. My sister, my husband, my marriage of 11 years, reduced to ashes in a matter of seconds. I felt the room spin, whispers rising like a wave ready to drown me, and then, as if to twist the knife deeper, she reached into her purse. "I have proof," she said, pulling out a folded document. The edges were worn, the paper creased from being handled over and over. Adam's will. He left everything to Lucas, everything. I could barely hear her over the roaring in my ears. My heart hammered so loudly I thought I would collapse. My hands trembled as I tried to focus on the paper she unfolded, the bold letters at the top. Last will and testament of Adam Whitmore. It was real. My world shattered. And all I could think, standing there in that suffocating room filled with Adam's mourners and Cassandra's triumphant declaration, was that I had lost everything. My husband, my trust, my future. But as the whispers swelled around me, as pity turned into curiosity and judgment, a new thought pushed its way through the haze of grief. If this was the truth she chose to unveil today, then what other truths had been buried with Adam? And in that moment, something inside me hardened. The grief was still there, raw and burning, but beneath it was something else, something colder, sharper. I would find out. I would uncover every secret, every betrayal, and I would make them pay. When the last of the mourners had gone, and the echoes of their whispered gossip faded into the night, I found myself standing alone in the empty reception hall. The chairs were still askew from the chaos of Cassandra's revelation. Plates of untouched food sat cold and abandoned, and the scent of lilies lingered like a ghost that refused to leave. My body felt numb, as if grief and shock had drained the very marrow from my bones. I lowered myself into a chair and buried my face in my trembling hands. My sister's voice replayed in my head again and again, each word slicing deeper. Lucas is Adam's son. He left everything to him. I could almost see Adam's handwriting on that will, bold and steady, the same handwriting that once filled birthday cards and grocery lists he stuck on the fridge for me. Now those strokes of ink had been weaponized, erasing me from the life I thought we had built together. The betrayal burned. It was not just the fact that Adam had strayed, that he had given a part of himself to my sister of all people. It was the coldness of the act, the cruelty of keeping me in the dark while building a secret family under my nose. Cassandra had always been the wild one, the sister who craved attention, who turned every gathering into a stage for herself. I used to defend her, even when others shook their heads. I told myself she was misunderstood, fragile someone who needed protection. Now I saw the truth. She had been patient, calculating, weaving herself into my life until the moment she could strike. I should have collapsed under the weight of it all, but something inside me refused to break. There was a hardness growing in my chest, a quiet determination. If Adam truly left everything to Lucas, if Cassandra was telling the truth, then why had I never seen a hint of it? Why had Adam never mentioned revising his will, never looked me in the eye and confessed? He was a man who prided himself on honesty. Even when he came home late from work, he would call to explain, his voice warm with reassurance. Something did not fit. I remembered the night Adam died. He had complained of a headache, sudden and sharp. I urged him to rest, to let me call the doctor, but he waved it off, insisting he was fine. Hours later he collapsed, and by the time the ambulance arrived it was too late. The doctor said aneurysm, a natural tragedy, nothing to be done. But now, in the haze of betrayal, doubt seeped in. What if his death had not been as simple as they claimed? I rose from the chair and walked toward the table where Cassandra had spread out the will earlier. I could still see the faint crease in the tablecloth where she had smoothed the document with deliberate care, savoring every moment as she tore my world apart. My fists clenched. I needed to see that paper again, to study it with my own eyes. Later that night, when I returned home, the house felt foreign. Every corner whispered memories of Adam. His jacket still hung on the hook by the door, his favorite mug sat in the sink, and the bed smelled faintly of his cologne. I touched the pillow where his head once rested and felt the tears return. Grief and anger collided inside me, twisting until I could barely tell one from the other. I poured myself a glass of water, though my hands shook so violently that half of it spilled onto the counter. My reflection in the kitchen window startled me. I looked older, harsher, my eyes hollow and rimmed red. For the first time in my life, I did not recognize the woman staring back. Sleep did not come easily. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw Cassandra's smirk hidden behind her mask of grief. I saw Lucas's innocent face, a child caught in a web of betrayal he never asked to be part of. And I saw Adam, the man I loved, the man who had promised me forever, slipping further and further away until all that remained was a signature on a piece of paper that erased me. By dawn, I had made a decision. I would not let Cassandra control the narrative. I would not let her prance around as the grieving sister who carried Adam's legacy. If Adam had truly left that will, I would prove it beyond any shadow of doubt. And if he had not, if this was one of Cassandra's elaborate manipulations, I would expose her for the liar she was. The first step was simple. I needed a copy of that will. I called Adam's lawyer, Mr. Harland, later that morning. My voice shook as I introduced myself, but I steadied it quickly. He spoke with the same calm professionalism I remembered from when Adam and I had signed our first mortgage papers. When I asked about the will, there was a long pause. "Yes, Mrs. Whitmore," he said finally. "Adam did leave behind a will. I have a copy in my office. Perhaps you should come by." His tone was careful, too careful, as though he were speaking through a veil of secrecy. My stomach churned. I dressed quickly, choosing a simple blouse and trousers, clothing that made me feel sharp and in control. The drive to his office felt endless, each stoplight a test of my patience. When I arrived, Mr. Harland greeted me with a solemn nod. He led me to his desk, where a folder sat waiting. "This is Adam's last will and testament," he said, sliding it toward me. I opened it with trembling hands. The words blurred at first, my eyes unable to process what they saw, but then the truth came into focus. Everything, every asset, every investment was left to Lucas. Not a word about me, his wife of 11 years. Not a provision for my well-being, not a single acknowledgement of our shared life. My chest tightened, rage mixing with disbelief. I looked up at Mr. Harland. When was this signed? He cleared his throat. 6 months ago. 6 months ago. Adam had been alive and well, still kissing me goodnight, still planning our summer vacation, still holding my hand in church. 6 months ago, he had been betraying me with a pen stroke, cutting me out of his life while pretending everything was fine. Or perhaps not Adam at all. Because as I stared at the signature at the bottom of the page, a thought gnawed at me. I knew Adam's handwriting better than anyone. I had traced it across love notes, signed cards, documents. And though the signature looked perfect, there was something off, something too precise, too practiced. My hands clenched the folder. If this will was forged, then Cassandra had not just betrayed me. She had killed Adam's memory, stolen his name to secure her son's future. And if that was true, then this was not just about betrayal anymore. This was war. The folder with Adam's supposed will weighed like a stone in my lap as I drove home from Mr. Harland's office. Each red light mocked me, forcing me to sit there and stare at the manila cover, knowing inside it lay the evidence of my erasure. But it was the signature that haunted me most, those familiar loops and strokes that should have been his yet carried a stiffness, a mechanical perfection that Adam never had. My husband wrote with warmth, his pen dancing with a casual rhythm. This signature felt colder, calculated, like someone had studied it too carefully. When I reached the house, I set the folder on the dining table and paced. I could not tell anyone yet. If Cassandra had gone so far as to produce this document in front of family and friends, she believed it would stand unchallenged. She was confident. And confidence in someone like her was a sign of preparation. I had to be cautious. I opened the folder again, tracing the date with my finger. 6 months ago. I replayed that time in my mind. 6 months ago, Adam and I had celebrated our 10th wedding anniversary. He had surprised me with a weekend trip to the mountains, complete with champagne and a handwritten note tucked into my suitcase. I still kept that note, folded neatly in my jewelry box. If the will was signed during that period, then his handwriting on the note could be compared to this signature. The thought sparked like a flame. Evidence, proof. I rushed upstairs to the bedroom, heart pounding. My jewelry box sat on the dresser, a small silver case Adam had given me on our 3rd anniversary. I opened it with trembling fingers and pulled out the note. To my forever love, it began, followed by words that had made me cry tears of happiness back then. His signature at the bottom was fluid, alive. I set the note beside the will. Side by side, the difference screamed at me. The will's signature lacked the tiny flourish Adam always added at the end, the almost imperceptible curve that only someone who loved him would notice. The letters were too evenly spaced, too perfect, as though drawn slowly instead of flowing naturally. My suspicion hardened into conviction. This will had been forged. I pressed the papers flat and snapped photos with my phone. I would need them later. My pulse quickened with the realization that I was stepping onto a dangerous path. If Cassandra was behind this, she would not sit idly by while I uncovered her lies. She had already humiliated me once at Adam's funeral, striking when I was weakest. What would she do if she discovered I was fighting back? That night, I could not sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, every creak of the house sounding like a threat. At one point, I thought I heard footsteps outside, a shadow moving across the lawn, but when I checked the window, there was nothing. Perhaps it was paranoia, or perhaps my instincts were sharpening. In the morning, I called an old friend of Adam's, Daniel, who worked as a financial advisor. He had often helped Adam review contracts and investments. If anyone could recognize discrepancies in documents, it was him. I told him I needed advice about some papers Adam had left behind. He agreed to meet me later that week. Meanwhile, Cassandra kept calling. Her number flashed on my phone again and again. At first I ignored her, but eventually curiosity won. I answered, forcing my voice to remain calm. "You've been quiet," she said sweetly, her tone laced with false sympathy. "I hope you're not upset about yesterday. I only wanted to be honest." Honest. The word nearly made me laugh. "You chose to announce it at Adam's funeral," I replied coldly. "That wasn't honesty, that was cruelty." A pause, then her voice hardened, losing its mask of concern. "You'll understand soon enough. This is about Lucas. Adam wanted to take care of him, you should accept that." "I'll accept the truth when I see it," I said, and hung up before she could respond. My hands shook, but there was a strange satisfaction in refusing to play her game. The next day, I went through Adam's office at home. Stacks of old contracts, bills, and letters filled the drawers. I searched for anything dated around 6 months ago, hoping to find his authentic signature. At last, I found a check stub with his handwriting. The signature matched the anniversary note, not the will. My chest tightened with a mix of sorrow and vindication. As I tucked the check away for safekeeping, I noticed something else, a small locked box hidden behind folders in the bottom drawer. I remembered Adam mentioning it once, joking that every man needed a secret vault, but I had never seen it before. The box was steel, sturdy, with a tiny keyhole. My heart thudded as I realized that whatever was inside might hold answers, but I had no key. That night, memories of Adam flooded me as I stared at the locked box. Had he known his death was coming? Had he hidden something here because he no longer trusted Cassandra? The thought tore at me. Our marriage had not been perfect, but he had always said I was his anchor. If he had secrets, why keep them from me? Unless he never had the chance to tell me. Unless Cassandra had made sure he never could. I clutched the box to my chest, whispering into the silence. I will find out, Adam, I promise. Over the next few days, I visited Daniel with the copies of the will and Adam's notes. He studied them carefully under a magnifying glass. When he looked up, his expression was grim. There are inconsistencies, he said. The pressure of the pen, the spacing, the flow. I can't say for certain without a professional forensic analyst, but this doesn't look genuine. If you pursue this, you could challenge the will. The words lit a fire inside me. Challenge? That meant Cassandra's grip on Adam's legacy was not unshakable. I thanked him and left, my mind already racing with plans. But as I drove home, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. 4 words that froze my blood. Stop digging, Bridget. I slammed the brakes, pulling to the side of the road. My eyes scanned the message again, heart hammering. Someone knew. Someone was watching me. And suddenly, the grief of widowhood no longer felt like the heaviest burden. Now I carried the weight of fear. The message burned on my phone screen long after I had pulled into the driveway. Stop digging, Bridget. Simple, anonymous, and chilling. My hands shook as I held the phone, the letters seeming to pulse like a warning from some unseen presence. I glanced around, scanning the quiet suburban street. The houses looked peaceful, curtains drawn, children's bicycles leaning against fences, a dog barking faintly in the distance. Yet I felt exposed, as if eyes were watching from behind every window. I locked the doors as soon as I stepped inside. The house, once my sanctuary, now felt like a cage. Shadows pooled in the corners, stretching and shifting as the evening light dimmed. I closed the blinds, checked the locks again, and sat at the kitchen table with the phone still in my hand. Who could have sent that message? Cassandra was the obvious suspect, but the words felt colder, less personal, as though they came from someone hired to intimidate. I opened a bottle of water and drank in small sips, trying to steady my breathing. The silence pressed against me until I could no longer bear it. I turned on the television for background noise, though I barely registered the images flickering across the screen. All I could think about was the locked steel box in Adam's office. My instincts screamed that the key to everything lay inside. The problem was simple. I did not have the key, but Adam had been meticulous. If he kept a box, he would have hidden the key somewhere close. I returned to his office, flicking on the lamp. The desk drawers were neat, almost too neat, as though someone had gone through them already. I pulled each one out completely, running my fingers along the grooves. Nothing. I checked the bookshelf, flipping through old novels, shaking out files, even feeling along the underside of the shelves. Still nothing. Frustrated, I slumped into his leather chair, inhaling the faint scent of him still clinging to the fabric. My eyes roamed the room, desperate for a clue. That was when I noticed the photograph on the wall, slightly tilted. It was a picture of us on our honeymoon, Adam with his arm around me, both of us smiling at the ocean. I reached up to straighten it, and the frame shifted oddly. My heart quickened. Behind the picture, taped to the wall, was a small brass key. I gasped, clutching it as though it might vanish. With trembling hands, I inserted it into the lock of the steel box. The mechanism clicked. Slowly, carefully, I lifted the lid. Inside were documents, neatly stacked, along with a small flash drive. I pulled out the top paper and felt the world tilt. It was a life insurance policy, naming me as the sole beneficiary. The date was recent, only 3 months before Adam's death. My pulse raced as I scanned the details. If Adam had truly intended to cut me out of his will, why would he update an insurance policy to ensure I would be taken care of? Beneath the policy was a handwritten letter. The familiar scrawl made my eyes sting with tears. My dearest Bridget, if you are reading this, it means something has gone terribly wrong. I have been pressured to change my will, but know this, I never intended to leave you with nothing. Cassandra has been persistent, and I fear her influence may reach further than I imagined. Please be careful. Trust no one completely. I love you forever, Adam. My hands shook so badly that the paper nearly slipped from my fingers. Adam had known. He had sensed Cassandra's manipulation, perhaps even her threats. The will she flaunted at the funeral was not his true desire. Rage burned hot in my chest, but beneath it was fear. If Adam had felt unsafe enough to hide this letter, what had Cassandra done? I turned to the flash drive next. My laptop hummed to life as I inserted it. Folders popped up on the screen, each labeled with dates. Inside were financial records, emails, and even voice recordings. I clicked on one at random and froze as Adam's voice filled the room. She says if I don't do it, she'll tell Bridget everything. But I can't. I can't destroy my marriage like this. God help me, I don't know what to do. My blood ran cold. Cassandra had blackmailed him. She had threatened him into compliance. The depth of her cruelty was deeper than I had ever imagined. As I sat there, listening to Adam's tormented voice, I realized the truth. His death might not have been natural at all. The aneurysm had been sudden, yes, but what if it had been triggered? What if Cassandra had found a way to silence him before he exposed her? The thought made me tremble, but it also steeled my resolve. I could no longer grieve passively, no longer let myself be paralyzed by betrayal. I had to act. The next morning, I contacted a private investigator named Evelyn, a woman recommended by Daniel. She listened quietly as I explained the situation, her sharp eyes never leaving mine. Forgery, blackmail, possible foul play, she summarized, tapping a pen against her notebook. It's a tangled web, but webs can be unraveled. I handed her copies of the will, the insurance policy, and the letter Adam had left. She studied them with the precision of a surgeon. This will take time, she said, and it will be dangerous. Whoever sent that text already knows you're looking. I don't care, I replied, my voice steady. I need the truth, Evelyn nodded. Then you'll have it. That evening, as I walked back into the quiet of my home, I felt a shift within myself. The widow who had wept at her husband's funeral was gone. In her place was a woman forged by grief and betrayal, sharpened by the knowledge of secrets too poisonous to ignore. But the shadows had grown darker. I could feel them pressing closer, whispering threats I could not yet see. And somewhere out there, Cassandra was waiting, confident in her lies. She believed she had already won. She was wrong. The following days blurred into one long stretch of caution and whispers. Evelyn moved like a shadow herself, appearing at odd hours with updates, always calm and precise. She spoke little, but each word carried weight. I trusted her instinctively, though trust had become a fragile currency in my life. She began with the obvious. The will, the insurance policy, the letter Adam left behind. She sent the documents to a handwriting expert she knew, someone discreet, someone who would not leak information to Cassandra. While we waited, she dug into Cassandra's financial history. One evening, as we sat in my kitchen with cups of untouched coffee between us, Evelyn laid out her findings. Your sister's spending habits changed drastically about a year ago. Luxury purchases, new jewelry, trips out of town, but her income remained the same. Either someone was funding her or she found another source of money. I thought of Cassandra's smug smile at the funeral, the way she clutched Luca's as though the child was her shield. Adam, I whispered bitterly. She used him. Evelyn tilted her head. Perhaps, but it's possible she had other benefactors. Adam wasn't the only man she manipulated. The words made my stomach twist. My sister had always thrived on attention, but the idea that she spun webs beyond Adam chilled me. Evelyn showed me statements, suspicious transfers linked to shell accounts. Cassandra had built a network, and Adam might have been just one piece of her puzzle. Later that night, after Evelyn left, I sat alone with Adam's recordings from the flash drive. His voice was weary, strained, a man caught between love and fear. She says she'll ruin everything. She'll tell Bridget, I can't let her destroy her like that. My eyes burned with tears as I replayed the clip. Adam had wanted to protect me, even while trapped in Cassandra's snare. Guilt pressed heavy against my chest. If only I had noticed sooner. If only I had asked the right questions. But grief quickly hardened into determination. Cassandra had stolen enough from me. I would not let her steal Adam's truth. The next morning, Evelyn called. We need to talk, somewhere private. We met in a small cafe on the edge of town, a place filled with the hum of conversations that made it easier to blend in. She slid an envelope across the table. Inside was the handwriting analysis. It's forged, she said simply. The signature on the will is not your husband's. The pressure points don't match, the natural curves aren't there. Whoever did this was skilled, but not flawless. Relief and rage flooded me at once. I had known it in my heart, but now I had proof. Cassandra had crossed the line from betrayal to crime. Evelyn leaned closer. We have leverage now, but we need more. If this goes to court, Cassandra will fight with everything she has. We need to prove motive, opportunity, and means. Motive is clear, I said bitterly. Money, control. She wanted everything. Evelyn nodded. Opportunity and means will be harder, especially if Adam's death was not natural. The thought hung between us like smoke. I had avoided saying it aloud, but Evelyn gave it voice without hesitation. Do you think she killed him? I asked quietly. Evelyn's eyes were sharp. I think she had something to gain from his death. Whether she orchestrated it or simply exploited it, we'll find out. That night, as I lay awake in bed, I felt the walls of my home close in. Every creak sounded like a warning, every shadow stretched like a threat. I kept Adam's letter on the nightstand, his handwriting a lifeline. I whispered promises to him in the dark, vowing that I would uncover everything. 2 days later, Evelyn called again. Her voice was tight. Someone's following me. Dark car, tinted windows, they don't try to hide it. My pulse spiked. Cassandra? Possibly, or someone working for her. Be careful, Bridget, they may target you too. The warning proved true that evening. As I returned from the grocery store, I noticed a black SUV parked across the street from my house. Its engine idled, exhaust puffing into the night. When I slowed my car, the SUV pulled away, disappearing into the dark. A chill crawled down my spine. I called Evelyn immediately. They're watching me too. Then we're getting close, she said grimly. The next step was riskier. Evelyn suggested we dig into medical records. If Adam's death had been tampered with, there would be traces. It would not be easy, hospitals guarded those files fiercely. But Evelyn had contacts, people who owed her favors. A week later, she showed me what she found. The autopsy report, hastily written, almost careless. Cause of death, aneurysm. No further analysis, no toxicology. Evelyn tapped the page with her finger. Too convenient. They closed the case quickly, probably to avoid questions. If poison or drugs were involved, no one looked for them. My heart clenched. You think she poisoned him? It's possible. Slow-acting toxins can mimic natural causes. Some leave the body quickly before tests can detect them. If Cassandra planned it, she chose well. I felt sick. The idea that my sister had not only betrayed me but murdered Adam was almost too much to bear. Yet the evidence piled higher each day, pointing to a truth darker than I had feared. That night, as I sat by the window, I saw the SUV again. It lingered at the corner, headlights dimmed, watching. My fear gave way to fury. I would not be intimidated. Adam deserved justice, and I deserved the truth. I picked up the phone and called Evelyn. My voice was steady, steel beneath the grief. It's time, I said. We confront her. The decision to confront Cassandra was not one I made lightly. For days, I rehearsed it in my head, imagining every possible response she might have, every lie she might spin, every tear she might force from her eyes to disguise her cruelty. Yet nothing could truly prepare me for facing her, not as my sister, but as the woman who had destroyed my marriage and possibly stolen my husband's life. Evelyn helped me plan. She was methodical, calm, the perfect balance to my storm of grief and rage. We agreed it could not be done in public. Cassandra thrived on an audience. She fed on the shock and pity of others, using it like armor. No, this had to be private, controlled, a place where her performance would crumble without applause. I chose my parents' old summer house at the edge of town, a place Cassandra and I had visited often as children. It was quiet, secluded, and above all, neutral. I told her I needed to talk, that we owed it to Adam's memory to clear the air. Predictably, she agreed without hesitation, likely eager to twist the knife deeper into me. The day of the meeting, the air was heavy with storm clouds. I arrived early, walking through the dusty rooms where echoes of our childhood laughter seemed to linger. The house smelled faintly of cedar and abandonment, the windows streaked with rain that had begun to fall in thin sheets. I set out 2 chairs at the dining table, though my hands trembled as I did. Evelyn was nearby, parked out of sight, ready if things turned dangerous. Cassandra arrived fashionably late, as always, stepping through the doorway with Lucas in her arms. She set him down with a toy and turned to me with that infuriating smile, the one that had charmed countless people, but now only filled me with disgust. "You look tired, Bridget," she said softly, feigning concern. "Grief is heavy, isn't it?" I forced a tight smile. "Sit down." She raised a brow at my tone but complied, smoothing her black dress as though preparing for another performance. I studied her face, searching for the sister I once loved. All I saw was calculation. "I know about the will," I began, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "I know it's forged." Her expression didn't falter, not even for a second. Instead, she leaned back, crossing her legs with elegance. "That's a serious accusation." It's not an accusation. It's the truth. I've had it analyzed. The signature is Adam's. You forged it, Cassandra. For a moment, silence stretched between us. Then she laughed, a low, mocking sound. You're desperate, Bridget. Adam is gone and you can't accept reality. He loved Lucas. He wanted to provide for him. Why is that so hard for you to believe? Because I know my husband, I snapped, my voice rising. I know how he wrote, how he thought, how he loved. And I know he would never cut me out of his life. He left me a letter, Cassandra. He knew what you were doing. He warned me. Her smile faltered then, the first crack in her mask. Her eyes narrowed, lips tightening. You shouldn't go digging into things you don't understand. Was it you? I asked, my words sharp, relentless. Did you kill him? Did you poison him so you could finally have everything you wanted? Her face paled, but only for an instant. Then she composed herself, leaning forward. Careful, sister. Those are dangerous words. The air between us crackled with tension. Lucas babbled softly in the corner, his innocent voice a cruel contrast to the venomous truth unfolding at the table. You ruined him, I whispered, tears burning my eyes. You blackmailed him, threatened him, and when he resisted, you ended his life. Cassandra's hand slammed against the table, startling me. You think you're so righteous, she hissed. But Adam wasn't the saint you imagine. He wanted me, Bridget. He loved me. Lucas is proof of that. Her words sliced through me, but I refused to show the pain. I leaned closer, meeting her eyes with steel. No, Lucas is proof of your manipulation, not his love. You trapped him, and now I will expose you. Her smile returned then, cruel and cold. Expose me? To whom? Everyone already believes me. You are the grieving widow clinging to fantasies, while I am the mother of Adam's child. Who do you think people will side with? I felt the weight of her words, the truth in them. She had played her cards well, woven her story so tightly that unraveling it would take more than accusations. But I had more than words now. I had evidence and I had Evelyn. I stood, my voice firm. Enjoy your delusions while you can, Cassandra. They won't protect you forever. Her eyes narrowed, but before she could respond, thunder cracked outside, shaking the windows. Lucas whimpered, and she scooped him into her arms. Without another word, she swept out of the house, her heels clicking against the floor like the toll of a clock counting down. When the door closed behind her, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My hands trembled violently, my whole body quaking with the confrontation. Evelyn appeared moments later, her presence steadying me. You did well, she said softly. I don't feel like it, I admitted, my voice breaking. She's too confident, too untouchable. Evelyn placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Confidence is often the mask of the guilty. She's cracking, Bridget. We just need to push harder. As we left the summer house, the storm finally broke, rain lashing against the car as we drove away. I stared out at the dark road ahead, my reflection fractured in the raindrops on the glass. Cassandra thought she had won. But tonight, I had seen fear flicker in her eyes, however briefly. And that flicker was enough. The storm had passed by morning, but the air still smelled of rain and wet earth. I woke with heavy eyes and a heart still thundering from the confrontation with Cassandra. Her words had cut deep, but what haunted me most was the way her mask had slipped, even for an instant. Beneath the smug smile and false concern, there was fear. That fear was my weapon, and I intended to use it. Evelyn arrived at the house just after sunrise, carrying her laptop and a stack of files. She had not slept either. The lines under her eyes betrayed her exhaustion, though her voice was steady as always. I started digging into her accounts again, she said, setting the files on the table. Cassandra isn't just living off Adam's money, she's tied to other sources, some of them dangerous. I leaned forward, my stomach tightening. What do you mean by dangerous? Evelyn opened her laptop and showed me bank transfers, names of companies I didn't recognize. Shell corporations, offshore accounts, connections to people with criminal records. Cassandra isn't acting alone. Someone has been helping her, funding her lifestyle, protecting her. This goes deeper than family betrayal. The words made my skin crawl. It was one thing to face Cassandra, my manipulative sister, but another to realize she was entangled in something larger, something darker. Do you think Adam knew? I asked quietly. Evelyn hesitated. From the files he saved, I think he suspected. The flash drive wasn't just about you or the will. There are documents that trace suspicious payments. He may have been investigating her himself. My heart clenched. Adam had known Cassandra's poison ran deeper, and he had tried to uncover it. Had that been what cost him his life? I picked up one of the files Evelyn had brought. It detailed a series of wire transfers, large sums funneled through different names until they disappeared into foreign accounts. One name appeared more than once, Marcus Hale. Who is he? I asked. Evelyn's eyes hardened. A businessman on the surface, but his reputation is unsavory. He's been accused of laundering money, bribing officials, but nothing sticks. If Cassandra is tied to him, it explains her confidence. She's protected. The realization made my blood run cold. Cassandra wasn't just my enemy, she was shielded by people powerful enough to bury the truth. But instead of despair, the knowledge lit a fire inside me. If she thought she was untouchable, then exposing her would be all the more satisfying. Over the next few days, Evelyn and I worked in secret. We followed the paper trail, piecing together the puzzle Adam had started. Each discovery painted Cassandra not as a grieving sister, but as a calculating conspirator. She had used Adam for legitimacy, weaving her son into his legacy, while aligning herself with men like Marcus Hale to secure her position. But danger grew with each step we took. The black SUV appeared more frequently, lingering near my house, following at a distance when I drove. One night I returned home to find my front door slightly ajar, though nothing inside seemed disturbed. A warning. I slept with the letter Adam had written under my pillow, his words giving me strength in the dark hours. Evelyn urged caution, but I could see in her eyes that she, too, was drawn deeper into the fight. She admired Adam's courage, his attempt to resist Cassandra's control, and she wanted justice as much as I did. Then came the breakthrough. One evening, Evelyn showed me an email she had managed to retrieve from the flash drive. It was from Cassandra to Marcus Hale, dated only a week before Adam's death. He's resisting. I can't keep him quiet much longer. If he talks, everything falls apart. The words made my breath catch. Cassandra had not only threatened Adam, she had warned her accomplice that he might expose them. Days later, Adam was dead. My grief twisted into fury. I slammed my fist against the table. She killed him. She and Hale did this. Evelyn's gaze was steady. It looks that way, but we need undeniable proof if we want to bring them down. Right now, it's circumstantial. Then we get more, I said through clenched teeth. We don't stop until we have everything. The next step was dangerous. Evelyn suggested we attend a charity gala that Marcus Hale was hosting. Cassandra was on the guest list. It would be the perfect chance to observe them together, perhaps even catch them slipping in their arrogance. The thought of walking into a room filled with Cassandra's lies and Hale's power made my skin crawl, but I agreed. If this was the path to truth, I would walk it, no matter how treacherous. The night of the gala, I stood before the mirror in a black dress that hugged my frame, simple yet elegant. My reflection looked like a stranger, a widow transformed into a woman ready for battle. Evelyn joined me, her sharp eyes approving. "You're ready," she said. At the gala, the room glittered with wealth and deceit. Chandeliers sparkled, champagne flowed, and laughter echoed off marble walls. Cassandra was there, radiant in a crimson gown, her arm looped through Marcus Hale. The sight of them together nearly made me sick. She spotted me across the room, her smile faltering just slightly before she composed herself. Hale's gaze followed hers, landing on me with cold curiosity. In that moment, I knew he recognized me not as a stranger, but as an obstacle. I raised my glass, meeting Cassandra's eyes from across the distance. The war between us was no longer hidden in whispers. It was here, in the open, under crystal chandeliers and watchful eyes. And I swore silently that before this ended, everyone would see her for what she truly was. The gala shimmered with excess, the kind of event where people wore diamonds like armor and laughter disguised the sharp edge of ambition. I stepped carefully into that world, the black dress clinging to me like a shield, Evelyn at my side, her sharp gaze scanning every corner. The air buzzed with the hum of violins and murmured conversations, but beneath it all, I felt the tension of a battlefield. Cassandra moved through the crowd like a queen, her crimson gown blazing under the chandeliers, her smile wide and practiced. Marcus Hale walked beside her, tall and commanding, every handshake deliberate, every glance calculated. They were a pair carved out of deceit, and together they looked untouchable. I kept my distance at first, drifting through clusters of guests, pretending to sip champagne while my eyes tracked their movements. Cassandra laughed too easily, tilting her head toward Hale as though she belonged to him now. Watching them together was like swallowing glass, but it also fueled my resolve. If this was the mask she wore for society, I would be the one to tear it away. Evelyn nudged me subtly and nodded toward the bar. Hale had stepped away, speaking to a man in a gray suit whose nervous glances betrayed unease. Evelyn's voice was low in my ear. "That's one of Hale's associates, financial broker. He's been under investigation before. If we're lucky, he'll slip." We drifted closer, blending with the crowd. Snippets of conversation floated to us. The broker's voice was tight. The transfers are too obvious if anyone looks closely. Hale cut him off with a cold smile. No one will. I have friends in the right places. Just make sure the accounts stay clean. My heart raced. It wasn't a confession, but it was proof of the dirty dealings Evelyn had traced. I glanced at her. She had already lifted her phone discreetly, recording. Then Cassandra appeared at Hale's side again, her laughter slicing through the tension. She glanced across the room and our eyes met. For a split second, her smile wavered. She hadn't expected me here. I saw the flicker of annoyance, even fear, before she masked it with feigned delight. Well, she called, weaving through the crowd with Hale behind her. What a surprise, Bridget. I didn't think you were the type for events like this. I forced a calm smile, though my pulse hammered. I go where truth hides. Sometimes it hides in ballrooms. Her eyes narrowed just slightly, but she slipped into performance mode, drawing closer and pressing a kiss to my cheek as though we were still sisters. You always did have a flair for the dramatic. Hale's gaze lingered on me, cold and assessing. So this is the widow, he said smoothly. His voice carried the confidence of a man who believed himself untouchable. Yes, Cassandra replied quickly, looping her arm through his. My dear sister, she's still adjusting. I met his stare without flinching. I adjust quickly, especially when I see snakes dressed in suits. The words hung between us, sharp and deliberate. Cassandra's smile froze and Hale's eyes darkened. For a moment the music and chatter around us seemed to fade, the three of us locked in silent battle. Evelyn stepped forward, her presence subtle but firm, breaking the tension. She guided me away with a gentle hand at my elbow, whispering, "Don't provoke them too openly." Not yet. But as we moved back into the crowd, I felt a strange satisfaction. I had shaken Cassandra. Even if only slightly, the cracks in her mask were spreading. Later in the evening, I slipped away from the main hall, drawn by a corridor lined with velvet curtains. At the end was a private lounge reserved for Hale and his closest guests. I lingered near the doorway, listening. Inside, Hale's voice was low but clear. If she keeps pressing, deal with her. I don't want complications. Cassandra, are you listening? My breath caught. He was talking about me. Cassandra's voice followed, sharp with irritation. She's stubborn, Marcus, but she's nothing without proof. Let her dig, no one will believe her over me. Hale's reply chilled me. Belief doesn't matter, fear does. I backed away silently, my heart racing. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I forced myself to walk calmly, rejoining the gala as though nothing had happened. Evelyn found me quickly, concern flashing in her eyes when she saw my pale face. They're planning something, I whispered. They want to silence me. Evelyn's grip on my arm tightened. Then we hit them first. We already have recordings. We'll gather more enough to drag them into the light. As we left the gala, Cassandra's gaze followed me from across the room. Her smile was poised, her posture flawless, but her eyes told another story. They glimmered with unease, a shadow of the control she feared losing. I stepped out into the cool night air, my heels clicking against the marble steps. For the first time since Adam's funeral, I felt not like a widow stumbling in grief, but like a hunter who had found her prey. Cassandra thought the night belonged to her, but soon it would belong to me. The morning after the gala, I woke with the weight of last night still pressing on me. My body was restless, my mind replaying every glance, every word exchanged in that glittering ballroom. Cassandra's false smile, Hale's cold warning, the whispered threat that I had overheard from the private lounge. They had marked me as a problem, one they intended to solve. Yet instead of breaking me, their words had solidified my resolve. Evelyn arrived with her laptop and a determined glint in her eyes. She had already backed up the recordings from the gala, cataloging every detail, every slip of conversation. When she played them back, Hale's arrogance and Cassandra's brittle confidence filled my kitchen like poisonous smoke. "This is enough to rattle them," Evelyn said, pausing the recording. "But it's not enough to bring them down in court. We need law enforcement, but they won't move on whispers. We have to weave a net tight enough that Cassandra and Hale can't escape." The word net resonated inside me. For months, I had been trapped in Cassandra's web, suffocating on lies. Now it was time to turn her own tactics against her. We began by approaching a lawyer Evelyn trusted, a man named Richard Collins. He specialized in estate disputes, a sharp-witted figure with a reputation for persistence. I met him in his office, the walls lined with thick legal tomes, the air smelling faintly of leather and ink. After explaining everything, Richard steepled his fingers and leaned back. "Forgery, blackmail, financial fraud. You're not just fighting for Adam's estate, you're exposing a criminal enterprise. If we play this right, Bridget, we won't just overturn the will. We'll dismantle Cassandra's entire facade." His confidence steadied me, though a part of me feared the scale of what we were provoking. Cassandra was dangerous on her own. With Hale backing her, she was lethal. But Richard promised discretion, assuring me he would file preliminary motions quietly, building momentum before Cassandra even realized she was cornered. Evelyn, meanwhile, pursued the financial angle. She traced more transfers, uncovering links between Hale's businesses and Cassandra's sudden wealth. Each discovery felt like a puzzle piece Adam had left for me, pieces he had not lived long enough to connect. Every new thread tied Cassandra tighter to Hale, until their partnership looked less like coincidence and more like conspiracy. But the closer we came, the more dangerous the nights became. The black SUV appeared outside my home more often, its headlights a silent warning. Once, returning from Richard's office, I found my mailbox smashed open, the contents scattered on the street. A single piece of paper had been tucked among the debris, scrawled with 4 words that made my blood run cold. "Stop, or you'll join him." I held the note with trembling hands, bile rising in my throat. Fear washed over me, but beneath it, anger blazed hotter than ever. They thought intimidation would silence me. They thought I would cower like Adam had been forced to. They didn't understand that grief had already burned away my fear. I handed the note to Evelyn the next morning. Her jaw tightened as she read it. "They're desperate. Desperation makes people sloppy. That's good for us." Her calmness was my anchor, but I could see the flicker of concern in her eyes. She knew the risks better than I did. Still, she never suggested stopping. She knew, as I did, that stopping was no longer possible. The breakthrough came a week later when Evelyn intercepted a string of emails between Cassandra and Hale's broker. In them, Cassandra expressed frustration about my persistence, her words dripping with venom. "She won't give up. I told you this would happen. If she digs deeper, we're finished." That line was the dagger I needed. Cassandra was unraveling. Her confidence at the gala had been nothing more than a mask, a brittle shield cracking under the weight of exposure. Richard prepared a motion to challenge the will formally, attaching the handwriting analysis and Adam's insurance policy as preliminary evidence. Cassandra would be served within days. Evelyn insisted we deliver the blow suddenly, without warning, to knock her off balance, but Cassandra struck first. The night before the documents were to be filed, I returned home to find my living room window shattered. Glass glittered across the floor like ice. My heart pounded as I stepped inside, calling out, but no one answered. The house was empty. Nothing had been stolen, nothing damaged beyond the broken window. It was not a robbery. It was a message. Evelyn arrived minutes later, her hand on the small weapon she always carried. She swept through the house, checking each room before returning to me. "They want you scared," she said grimly. "It means we're close." I stared at the broken glass, fury tightening in my chest. "Then tomorrow, we make our move." The following morning, Richard filed the motion. Cassandra was served that afternoon. I imagined her reading the documents, her perfect smile cracking, her hands trembling as she realized her control was slipping. But I also knew she would not go down quietly. That night, as I sat in the quiet of my room, Adam's letter in my hand, I whispered to him again. "It's beginning, love. I will finish what you started. I will make her answer for what she did to you, to us." Outside, the SUV idled once more, headlights casting long shadows across my lawn. But this time, instead of fear, I felt something else. Resolve. The war had begun, and I was ready. The day after Richard filed the motion, silence fell like a storm cloud waiting to break. I spent the morning pacing through the house, listening to the creak of the floors, feeling the weight of every second. Somewhere across town, Cassandra was reading the challenge, realizing that the fortress she had built on lies and forged signatures was beginning to crack. I imagined her fury, the way her hands would clench, the hiss of her voice when she realized she was being cornered, but what I underestimated was her speed. Cassandra had always been quick to strike, never allowing others to dictate the pace of her battles. That night, she proved she had not lost her talent. I received a call from Richard just after dinner. His voice was sharp, clipped, the calm mask of a lawyer fractured by urgency. "She filed a countersuit," he said. "Defamation, harassment, emotional distress. She's trying to flip the narrative, Bridget. She claims you're unstable, that grief has driven you to fabricate accusations against her." The room tilted as his words sank in. I had expected resistance, but not such precision. Cassandra had painted herself as the victim, a grieving sister caring for her child, while I was cast as the jealous widow, desperate and vindictive. It was a story she knew the world would believe because she had rehearsed it all her life. Richard continued, "She's hired one of the most ruthless attorneys in the city. They'll drag you through the mud if we're not careful. But don't panic, we have the evidence. We just need to keep our focus." After the call, I sat in the dark, Adam's letter trembling in my hands. Cassandra wasn't just fighting me in court. She was waging war on my sanity, twisting the grief I carried into a weapon against me. For a moment, doubt clawed at me. What if people believed her? What if Adam's memory was smeared, reduced to a scandal that left us both broken? Evelyn found me like that, staring into the shadows. She took the letter gently from my hands and set it aside. "This is exactly what she wants," she said firmly. "To make you doubt yourself, to make you question your strength. But you're stronger than her, Bridget. Adam knew it. That's why he trusted you to finish this." Her words steadied me. I wiped my tears and met her gaze. "Then we fight. We don't give her a single inch." The weeks that followed were a blur of depositions, affidavits, and endless nights of preparation. Richard guided me through the legal maze, while Evelyn continued to dig into Cassandra's dealings with Hale. The deeper she dug, the darker it became. We discovered more shell accounts, connections to bribed officials, whispers of threats silenced with money. Each revelation painted Cassandra not as a grieving sister, but as a willing accomplice in Hale's empire. But Cassandra was relentless. She paraded Lucas in front of the court, painting him as the innocent child who deserved Adam's legacy. She cried on cue, her tears carefully timed to sway the judge and the press. Newspapers began to whisper about the widow's obsession, about a family feud spiraling out of control. I became the villain in stories written by people who had never seen Adam's pain, never heard the recordings of his broken voice. One evening, as Evelyn and I sifted through documents, she looked up with a grim expression. "They're planting stories in the media. Cassandra's using her connections to poison public opinion. If this goes to trial, the jury pool will already be biased." My chest tightened. "So she's winning?" "No," Evelyn said sharply. "She's scrambling." When people reach for lies aggressively, it's because the truth terrifies them. She knows we're close. Close or not, the danger grew. The SUV outside my house was replaced by men on foot, their shadows lingering at the edge of my yard. Once, I caught sight of Cassandra herself parked down the street, her silhouette illuminated by the glow of her phone. She watched my house like a predator circling prey. Then came the breaking point. Evelyn uncovered a bank transfer, $200,000 wired directly from Hale's account to the lawyer Cassandra had just hired. It was clear now, Cassandra was not just Hale's lover or pawn. She was his investment. We decided to use it. Richard drafted a motion to subpoena financial records, aiming to expose the link between Cassandra and Hale in court. But when Cassandra caught wind of our move, she escalated. A week before the hearing, I returned home to find a police car waiting in my driveway. An officer stepped forward, his face neutral. "Mrs. Lewis, we've had a report filed against you for harassment and threats. Your sister claims you've been stalking her, endangering her and her son." Shock rooted me to the ground. Evelyn argued with the officer, demanding proof, but the damage was done. Cassandra had struck again, twisting the truth until it strangled me. Though I wasn't arrested, the humiliation burned deep. Neighbors watched from their windows as the patrol car pulled away, their whispers already painting me as the unstable widow Cassandra described. That night, I sat in my kitchen, staring at the shards of my once simple life. Cassandra had taken Adam. She had taken my peace. And now she was trying to take my reputation, my sanity, everything I had left. But as I looked at Adam's letter once more, at the shaky lines where he had begged me to be careful, I felt a surge of clarity. Cassandra had won battles, yes, but wars are not won by theatrics. Wars are won by truth, and the truth was on my side. I picked up the phone and called Richard. My voice was calm, resolute. "File the subpoena. Expose the money. If Cassandra wants a war, I'll give her one." As I ended the call, thunder rolled in the distance, low and rumbling. The storm was returning, and this time it would not pass quietly. The days leading up to the hearing blurred into a storm of tension. Richard worked tirelessly on the motion, Evelyn hunted for more evidence, and I felt the weight of every hour pressing down on me. Cassandra had clawed her way into the role of victim, poisoning the air with her lies, but I could sense the cracks spreading beneath her mask. She was lashing out too wildly, too often. People like Cassandra only behaved that way when they feared losing control. Still, fear hung over me like a constant shadow. The SUV appeared again, parked across the street at odd hours. Sometimes it was empty, sometimes a figure lingered behind the wheel, unmoving. One night, I woke to the sound of footsteps outside my window, soft and deliberate. I gripped Adam's letter in my trembling hands until Evelyn arrived and swept through the house, her weapon drawn, her voice steady even as my heart nearly broke from terror. "This isn't just intimidation anymore," Evelyn said quietly as she secured the locks again. "They're escalating. Hale doesn't want you in court. Cassandra doesn't want her lies tested. They're preparing to silence you." The thought chilled me. For weeks I had imagined Cassandra as a manipulator, a thief, a liar. But now, faced with Hale's influence and her desperation, I had to confront the possibility that they would rather see me buried than beaten. 2 nights later, Evelyn and I drove into the city to meet one of her contacts, a former accountant who had once worked with Hale's companies. We parked in a dim lot beneath a flickering street lamp. The man's voice shook as he spoke, handing Evelyn a folder stuffed with papers. "I shouldn't be doing this," he muttered, "but I can't watch him ruin more lives. Those transfers, they prove Hale used your sister to funnel money. It's all in there. Dates, signatures, even communications." My breath caught as Evelyn flipped through the pages. It was more than we had hoped for, hard evidence, tangible proof that Cassandra was not just guilty of betrayal but complicit in criminal fraud. But the triumph lasted only moments. As the man hurried away, headlights flared at the edge of the lot. A dark car screeched toward us, tires screaming. Evelyn shoved me to the ground as bullets tore through the night, shattering the quiet with violence. Glass exploded as the car's windows lit with muzzle flashes. We scrambled behind our vehicle, hearts pounding. Evelyn returned fire, her movements sharp and precise, while I clutched the folder against my chest as if it were my last tether to Adam's memory. After what felt like eternity, the attackers sped off, their engine howling into the distance. Silence returned, broken only by the ringing in my ears and the thunder of my pulse. Evelyn knelt beside me, her face pale but fierce. "You see now, this isn't just about lies or wills, they're willing to kill for this." I nodded, breathless, the truth pressing against me like a crushing weight. Cassandra was no longer just my enemy. She had become a threat to my very existence. We fled the lot, driving in tense silence until we reached Evelyn's safe house on the edge of the city. My hands shook as I held the folder, still intact despite the chaos. Evelyn paced the room, her jaw tight. "They're desperate," she said again, though this time her voice held an edge of respect. "This file could destroy them, Bridget, but that means they'll do anything to keep it hidden." I sank into a chair, exhaustion wrapping around me. "She was my sister," I whispered. "How did it come to this?" Evelyn stopped pacing and looked at me with a rare softness. "Because some people are born hungry. Cassandra doesn't see family, she sees opportunity. And when people like that find power, they never let it go willingly." The days that followed were a blur of paranoia and preparation. Richard secured the new evidence, locking it away until the hearing. Evelyn insisted I stay at her safe house, away from the familiar patterns Cassandra could exploit. Even so, I felt the noose tightening. Phone calls with no answer. Anonymous emails filled with threats. A single envelope left on the doorstep of the safe house, containing nothing but a photograph of Adam's gravestone slashed with red ink. Every threat should have broken me. Yet strangely, I grew calmer. Fear had burned so hot for so long that now, in the face of outright violence, something inside me crystallized into steel. If Cassandra and Hale thought they could drive me into silence, they would learn how wrong they were. On the eve of the hearing, Evelyn sat across from me, her expression serious. "Tomorrow everything changes. We'll present the financial ties, the forged will, Adam's letter. It's enough to shake them, maybe even to topple them. But you need to be ready, Bridget. Cassandra won't go down without trying to take you with her." I nodded, my fingers tracing the edges of Adam's letter. "She's already taken so much. Tomorrow I take it back." That night, sleep eluded me. I sat by the window, watching the rain smear the world outside into blurred shadows. My thoughts were filled with Adam, his laugh, the way his hand had felt when it held mine, the softness in his eyes even during his darkest moments. I whispered to him again, promising that justice was close, that his suffering would not be buried with him. At dawn, as the city stirred to life, I dressed in black, the same color I had worn to his funeral, but this time it was not mourning attire. It was armor. Evelyn met me at the door, her eyes steady. "Ready." I breathed deeply, the weight of the folder heavy in my hand. "Ready." We stepped out into the storm, the courthouse waiting like a battlefield ahead. And in my chest, for the first time since Adam's death, I felt not only grief or rage but hope. The courthouse loomed above me like a stone fortress, its columns stretching into the gray morning sky. The steps were slick with rain, the air heavy with the scent of storms past and storms yet to come. Each footstep echoed as I climbed, Evelyn at my side, Richard just ahead, his briefcase clutched firmly in his hand. For a moment, I felt small beneath the weight of what awaited inside. But then I remembered Adam's letter, folded against my heart, and I straightened. I was no longer a grieving widow stumbling in the shadows. I was here to finish what he had begun. The courtroom was already filled when we entered. Cassandra sat at the opposite table, radiant as ever in a tailored navy suit, her hair swept into a perfect knot. Lucas was not with her this time. She had no need for innocence as a prop today. Instead, she leaned close to Marcus Hale, their whispered conversation like the hiss of serpents. Her attorney, a polished man with sharp eyes, sifted through documents with studied ease. When Cassandra noticed me, her lips curled into a smile that was equal parts pity and mockery. The judge entered and the room hushed. Papers shuffled, chairs creaked, and then the proceedings began. Richard rose first, his voice steady as he laid out the foundation of our case. The suspicious will, the handwriting analysis, Adam's letter of warning. Cassandra's attorney objected at every turn, his tone dripping with contempt, but Richard pressed forward, each word a chisel against the stone wall Cassandra had built. When it was Cassandra's turn, she performed as only she could. Tears shimmered in her eyes as she spoke of her beloved sister's grief, of the jealousy that poisoned my mind, of her son's rightful inheritance as Adam's child. She spoke of me as if I were a woman consumed by delusion, a tragic figure lashing out in desperation. The courtroom listened, some nodding, some frowning, the tide of sympathy pulling toward her. For a moment, doubt clawed at me again. Her lies were spun so beautifully, her voice breaking at all the right places, her hands trembling as though she carried unbearable weight. I looked down at my lap, at the letter Adam had written and whispered silently, "Help me, love, don't let her win." Then Evelyn pressed the folder into my hand. "Now," she whispered. Richard rose again, his tone sharper this time, cutting through Cassandra's performance. He presented the financial records Evelyn had uncovered, the transfers linking Cassandra directly to Hale. The room stirred, murmurs rising as names of offshore accounts and shell companies filled the air. Cassandra's composure flickered, but she forced her smile to remain. And then Richard dropped the dagger, the email Cassandra had written to Hale. "He's resisting. I can't keep him quiet much longer. If he talks, everything falls apart." The words echoed through the courtroom like a death knell. Gasps rippled across the room, the judge leaning forward, Cassandra's attorney paling as he tried to object. But the email was authenticated, time-stamped, and undeniable. Cassandra's mask cracked. Her hand trembled as she reached for her water glass, her lips tightening as whispers filled the chamber. Hale shifted beside her, his jaw clenched, his eyes flashing with fury not at us but at her. For the first time, I saw fear in Cassandra's eyes. The judge called a recess, and the courtroom emptied into the marble hallway. Cassandra stormed toward me, her heels clicking furiously against the floor. Her eyes burned with rage, her smile gone. "You think this changes anything?" she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "You think the truth matters? Hale owns half the city. You're nothing but a widow clinging to ghosts." I met her glare with calm steel. "You're wrong. The truth always matters, and ghosts don't stay silent forever." Evelyn stepped between us, her presence like a shield, and Cassandra recoiled, retreating toward Hale. He did not embrace her. Instead, he spoke sharply in her ear, his expression cold. She flinched as if struck, and in that moment I understood Cassandra was no longer his equal, no longer his partner. She was his liability. When the hearing resumed, Hale was called to the stand. He spoke smoothly at first, denying connections, dismissing the transfers as routine business. But under Richard's questioning, the cracks spread. Evelyn had anticipated every lie, every evasion, and Richard was ready. Piece by piece, the web Hale had spun unraveled, leaving him exposed. By the time the session ended, the judge's expression was grave, the courtroom buzzing with the weight of what had been revealed. Cassandra sat frozen, her face pale, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles whitened. Hale's attorney whispered furiously to him, but the damage was done. The ruling would not come immediately, but I could feel it in the air. The tide had turned. Cassandra had lost her hold. Outside the courthouse, the storm had broken, rain pouring down in relentless sheets. I stood beneath the gray sky, letting the rain wash over me, mingling with the tears I hadn't realized were falling. Evelyn stood beside me, silent but steady, her hand on my shoulder. Behind us, reporters swarmed Cassandra and Hale, their cameras flashing, their voices shouting questions she could no longer answer with rehearsed tears. Hale shoved through them, his mask of power slipping, while Cassandra struggled to keep pace, her perfect image dissolving in the rain. I turned away, my chest aching but lighter than it had been in months. Adam's letter was still against my heart, damp now but intact, his words etched into me forever. Justice was not yet fully delivered, but the battle was won. Cassandra would face consequences she could not charm her way out of, and Hale's empire would crumble under the weight of his arrogance. For the first time since Adam's funeral, I allowed myself to breathe deeply, to feel the storm pass. I whispered to him once more, my voice carried on the rain. "It's over, love. She can't hurt us anymore." And for the first time, I believed it.